Secretary Tillerson said and what Ambassador Haley said are the same thing, just said differently. Doesn't sound that way when you listen to them.
No, it definitely does not sound that way. And you've seen Tillerson and McMaster take a more cautious approach to Assad, and Nikki Haley has obviously gone further. He also, if you look at what the president himself has said, he's been asked this question and has not said specifically Assad must go. So they're leaving themselves some room for negotiation on a political resolution. But we've also even seen some differences in terms of whether the goal is to deal with ISIS and Assad at the same time, or if the goal is to deal with ISIS and then deal with a political resolution. And so there's a lot of different mixed messages coming out of the administration. I think people are looking for Secretary Tillerson to give some clarity when he's in Moscow.
To that point, and again, if you go back to the previous administration and now in this administration, there are no good choices. When you look at the list of options in Syria, there are no good choices. But now that you've punched Assad and you're already fighting ISIS inside of Syria, the question is, you're going to have two enemies within the same country. Senator Marco Rubio was talking about this weekend because he listened to that. Yeah. The way Tillerson put it one way and then the way Haley put it, he said these people have a bit of a problem.
There seems to be a difference between what Ambassador Haley is saying, as she said last night, that Assad really has no future, and what I heard this morning from Secretary Tillerson. But look, I don't mean to pick a fight with anyone here. What I'm telling you is I think that the strategy he seems to be outlining is based on assumptions that aren't going to work. There is no such thing as Assad, yes, but ISIS, no. This focus that you can defeat ISIS as long as Assad is there is not true. They are two sides of the same coin. As long as Bashar al-Assad is in power in Syria, you will have a reason for people to be radicalized in Syria.
But if you accept Senator Rubio's view, and he has long articulated it, and John McCain is in roughly the same camp, that means probably more U.S. boots on the ground, at least in the region surrounding it, safe zones along the Turkish-Syria border, no-fly zones, a much more heavy investment of potential risk to American forces and of American dollars and American diplomacy. Is this president prepared to do that, or does he disagree?
Yeah, and is Congress prepared to have a voice on this that goes beyond talking on a Sunday talk show, right? I mean, that was the big difficulty that Obama had, whether or not they were going to, Congress was going to authorize the use of military force. You've had some people like Lindsey Graham say, no, this basically is covered by the original AMUF after 9/11. So I think that's a real big question. I mean, we have these critics, Marco Rubio and the Hawks particularly, saying that this is clear as mud in terms of what Tillerson is saying versus Nikki Haley. But I think the real question at some point is going to be, if they want a more robust response that goes beyond this pinprick attack, then what are they willing to do in terms of voting?
And presidents change, especially when first tested. A new president gets tested on the world stage. They often end up throwing a lot of the stuff they said in the campaign trail overboard, or at least modifying it. I'll read this from a guy named Peter Baker in the New York Times this Sunday.
Smart guy.
To the extent that a Trump doctrine is emerging, it seems to be this: don't get roped in by doctrine. I think that is what we see early on. He is a transactional person, and so he's looking at this one crisis at a time. But can you do that? Can you sustain a presidency? And can your allies figure out what you're going to do? Can your own team figure out what they should prepare for if you look at, okay, this is Syria, chemical weapons use, Tomahawk cruise missiles. But what about the end of the week if North Korea lobs another missile?
Right, that's exactly right. There was a lot of relief and support offered by a lot of the foreign policy establishment in Washington and around the world among the allies after he launched the cruise missile strike, because they felt like that was something that was a long time in coming. President Obama should have done it. But the second day thinking is, what does this mean? How do we predict? And we want, allies want in an American president predictability, under a certain consistency, and they're not getting that here at this point. And I don't think that one strike necessarily means he's changed his mind. Right. Syria is now really an American problem. He used the language, he said instability in the region is a threat to America's security. That's a big change. Whether he means that enough to put more boots on the ground, whether he means that to do the kind of risky and dangerous things that might be required, that's a different question.
And especially if you had studied the campaign, or even before he was a candidate, back to 2013, when Syria crossed Obama's red line, used chemical weapons, and Donald Trump, then a private citizen, perhaps thinking about running for president, but a private citizen, said, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, it's not in America's interest, don't get caught up in this quagmire. Throughout the campaign, he was the America First candidate, to the degree that now as people try to figure out who is he now, again, listen to General Hayden trying to say, this was not America First.
What pushed this into the red was that we wanted to make the statement that that was unacceptable activity. And what's really remarkable, that's about as far away from America First as a philosophy as you can get. That's America doing something unilaterally for what I call the good of the order, rather than a narrowly defined American self-interest. It was a remarkable flip from the man we saw in the campaign.
A remarkable flip, but the question is what comes next, because he's now drawn the red line on chemical weapons. He saw the pictures of those babies after that attack, and he said, I'm not going to stand for that. I'm going to throw a punch, as you noted. A lot of people think President Obama should have thrown a long time ago. The question is, as you also noted earlier in the program, that air base is back up and running. They have launched conventional weapons attacks, dropping bombs from airplanes on the very same province. Lindsey Graham looks at that and says, Syria, here's Bashar al-Assad's answer to President Trump.
If you kill babies with conventional bombs, it's still a moral outrage. Here's what I think Assad's telling Trump by flying from this base: F you. And I think he's making a serious mistake, because if you're an adversary of the United States and you don't worry about what Trump may do on any given day, then you're crazy.
Strong and colorful language there, not a surprise from the senator from South Carolina. But to the point about the FU, and forgive me for repeating it in that way, but it's important to the idea that what Lindsey Graham is saying is, okay, you said no chemical weapons, so I'm going to use the same airbase, I'm going to bomb the same province, and guess what? I'm going to kill more children. What are you going to do if it's not chemical weapons?